The stars were cold and distant, just like they had always been. Captain Minho stood on the bridge of what looked like an ordinary space station orbiting Earth. His uniform was simple, dark blue with silver trim. He watched the screens in front of him with calm eyes. Those screens showed something that would change everything. 20 alien warships were coming toward Earth. Each ship was massive, bigger than any city on the planet below. They moved through space like predators, confident and unstoppable. The aliens called themselves the Vexari. They had sent a message to Earth 3 days ago, and today they expected an answer. Commander Yuna stood beside Minho. She was shorter than him, but her presence filled the room. Her dark eyes tracked every movement of the alien fleet on the displays. She had been waiting for this moment for 10 years. They all had been waiting. They still think we're helpless, Yuna said quietly. Her voice carried no emotion, just cold facts. They haven't scanned past Mars. They haven't even looked at the asteroid belt. Minho nodded. The Vexari were arrogant. They had good reason to be. For 300 years, they had conquered world after world. They had destroyed civilizations that refused to surrender. They had enslaved species that were too weak to fight back. When they found Earth 70 years ago, they had marked it as primitive in their records. No faster than light travel. No unified world government. No energy shields or plasma weapons. The Vexari were wrong about Earth. They were very, very wrong. How long until they reach the moon? Minho asked. 42 minutes, replied a young officer at the weapons station. His name was Jiho. He was 26 years old and had never seen combat. Neither had anyone else on this station, but they had trained their entire lives for this day. Minho pressed a button on his chair. It was a simple red button, unmarked and ordinary looking. But that button was connected to systems all across the solar system. When he pressed it, everything changed. On the moon, deep underground, massive doors began to open. The doors were built into the rock itself, hidden so perfectly that no sensor had ever detected them. Behind those doors were hangars carved from solid stone, each one large enough to hold a mountain. 16 hangars opened simultaneously. Inside each one was a ship. These were not ordinary ships. They were dreadnoughts, the largest warships humanity had ever built. Each one was 5 kilometers long and bristled with weapons that the galaxy didn't know existed. They had been sleeping in the dark for decades, waiting for this moment. In the asteroid belt, 40 more ships woke up. These had been disguised as asteroids themselves, covered in rock and ice. Their heat signatures masked by clever engineering. They powered up their reactors and prepared their weapons. And in the deep shadows near Jupiter, where radiation storms made scanning impossible, the pride of Earth's fleet came online. These were the newest ships, the most advanced. They had been built in secret shipyards that floated in the gas giant's orbit, hidden from the entire galaxy. The Vexari fleet continued forward, unaware that they were already surrounded. On the alien flagship, Commander Thorzun studied his displays with growing impatience. The primitive humans had not responded to his demands. He had given them a simple choice: surrender or die. It was the same choice he had given to 50 other species. Most surrendered. A few chose to fight. All of them died. Thorzun was a veteran of 100 conquests. He had seen every trick, every desperate attempt to delay the inevitable. But the humans were doing something he had never seen before. They were doing nothing. Their planet continued its normal routine. Ships flew between Earth and its moon. Satellites orbited peacefully. There were no military preparations, no planetary shields activating, no distress calls to nearby systems. It was almost insulting. "Sir," his sensor officer said suddenly, "I'm detecting something strange." Thorzun looked up from his reports. "Strange how?" "New contacts. Lots of them. They're appearing all around us." Thorzun's blood went cold. He stared at his tactical display as it populated with new symbols. 1 contact, 5 contacts, 20 contacts. 50 contacts. The numbers kept climbing. Within 30 seconds, his display showed 68 capital ships, each one larger than his entire fleet. How is this possible? Thorzun whispered. Where did they come from? His sensor officer's voice shook as he answered. Sir, they were always there. They've been here the entire time. We just couldn't see them. The truth hit Thorzun like a physical blow. The humans had been hiding. For 70 years, they had hidden their true strength, while the galaxy thought Earth was primitive and weak. The humans had been building warships in secret. They had developed technology that could fool Vexari sensors. Technology that shouldn't exist on a world without faster-than-light travel. A message came through on all frequencies. It was in perfect Vexari language, spoken by a human voice. Vexari Fleet, this is Captain Minho of the Earth Defense Force. You have entered our system with weapons armed and hostile intent. You demanded our surrender. You thought we were defenseless. There was a pause, and Thorzun could hear the cold smile in the human's voice. You were wrong. On the bridge of his station, Minho continued speaking. He had rehearsed these words for years, but they felt different now that the moment had arrived. You have one chance. Turn your ships around. Leave our system. Never come back. If you refuse, we will show you exactly how wrong you were about humanity. Yuna watched the Vexari fleet on the tactical display. She counted the seconds. 10, 20, 30. The aliens weren't responding. They were probably in shock, trying to understand how the situation had turned against them so completely. Jiho's hands moved over his weapons console, ready but patient. Around Earth, on the moon, in the asteroid belt, on every human warship, thousands of other officers did the same. They were ready. They had been ready for decades. Finally, Thorzun made his decision. His pride would not allow retreat. His emperor would not forgive failure. He gave the order that would doom his fleet. All ships, open fire. The Vexari fleet launched its attack. Plasma bolts streaked through space toward the human ships. Missiles left their tubes by the hundreds. Energy beams cut through the darkness. Minho watched the attack come. He waited until the last possible moment. Then, he gave his order. All ships, weapons free. Show them what Earth has built. What happened next would be recorded in history books across the galaxy. The human dreadnoughts opened fire with weapons the Vexari had never seen. Railguns accelerated metal slugs to incredible speeds that made them nearly unstoppable. The slugs hit Vexari shields and punched straight through them like they weren't even there. Energy weapons, powered by fusion reactors that shouldn't exist on a primitive world, carved through armor plating designed to withstand conventional plasma fire. Missiles that could think for themselves hunted down Vexari ships with ruthless efficiency. The battle was not a battle, it was a demonstration. In 17 minutes, 19 Vexari warships were reduced to debris. Only one ship remained intact. Its weapons destroyed, its engines crippled. Thorzun's flagship floated helplessly in space, surrounded by the wreckage of his fleet. Minho opened a channel to the surviving ship. Tell your emperor what happened here today. Tell him that Earth is no longer silent. Tell him that humanity will never surrender. And tell him that if he sends another fleet, we will destroy it, just like we destroyed yours. He closed the channel and turned to Yuna. She was smiling, just slightly. It was the first time he had seen her smile in years. Orders, Captain? She asked. Let them go. They need to spread the word. The galaxy needs to know that everything has changed. The damaged Vexari flagship turned slowly and limped away, heading back toward their empire. Behind it, the human dreadnoughts maintained their formation, silent and watchful. They had broken their 70 years of silence with thunder and fire. Now, the entire galaxy would hear their voice. The news spread across the galaxy like wildfire. Within 3 days, every civilized world knew what had happened at Earth. The Vexari Empire, one of the most powerful forces in known space, had lost an entire fleet to a species they had classified as primitive. Governments that had feared the Vexari for centuries suddenly had questions. How had the humans done it? What weapons did they possess? And most importantly, what did they want? Ambassador Salmon walked through the corridors of the Galactic Council station with her head held high. She was the first human to ever set foot in this place. For 70 years, Earth had been denied representation. The Council said humans were too primitive to participate in galactic affairs. They said Earth needed to develop faster than light travel first. They said humanity needed to unite under one government before they could have a voice. All of those were lies. The truth was simpler. The Council didn't want to give representation to a species that might upset the balance of power. Better to keep humans isolated, ignorant, and weak. But now, everything had changed. Salmon's assistant, Tae-hyun, walked beside her carrying a datapad filled with information. He was younger than Salmon, barely 30, but he had one of the sharpest minds in Earth's diplomatic corps. He had studied every species in the Council, learned their languages, understood their politics. Today, all that knowledge would be tested. They're afraid, Tae-hyun said quietly as they walked. Around them, alien diplomats and their assistants stared. Some looked curious, others looked angry, most looked frightened. The Vexari were supposed to be unstoppable. Now they know there's a species that can defeat them easily. Good, Salmon replied. Her voice was calm, but there was steel underneath. Fear will make them listen. Respect will make them remember. The council chamber was enormous. It was built to hold representatives from 300 species, each with their own area designed to accommodate their unique biology. There were sections filled with water for aquatic species, areas with different atmospheric pressures for beings that breathed gases humans had never heard of, zero-gravity zones for species that had evolved in space itself. At the center of it all was the Council Prime's seat. Council Prime Velterix was old, even by his species' standards. He had led the Council for over 200 years. He had seen empires rise and fall. He had witnessed wars that destroyed entire star systems. And now, he was looking at Salmon with something in his eyes she couldn't quite identify. Was it respect? Fear? Or maybe just surprise? Ambassador Salmon of Earth. Velterix's voice boomed through the chamber. It was translated into hundreds of languages simultaneously. You come before this council, without invitation. You come without following proper protocols. Explain yourself. We can trust Paparon. Salmon stepped forward. She had rehearsed this moment 1,000 times. But standing here, in front of 300 species, was different than any simulation. She took a breath and began. Council Prime, honored delegates. I come before you today, not to ask for a seat at this table. I come to claim the seat that has always belonged to humanity. For 70 years, you denied us representation. You said we were primitive. You said we were divided. You said we weren't ready. She paused and looked around the chamber. Every eye, on every face, on every strange alien head, was watching her. But the truth is, you knew we were ready. You just didn't want us here. Because if humans joined the council, we might ask uncomfortable questions. We might challenge the way things have always been done. We might object to the conquest and enslavement that some empires practice freely. Angry sounds came from various parts of the chamber. The Vexari delegation, diminished but still present, looked furious. Several other expansionist empires shifted uncomfortably. Tae-hyun stepped forward and activated his datapad. Holographic images appeared in the center of the chamber, visible to everyone. The images showed the battle near Earth. They showed human dreadnoughts destroying Vexari warships. They showed technology that the Council had believed impossible for a pre-faster-than-light species. For 70 years, we watched you, Tae-hyun said. His voice was younger than Salmon's, but just as firm. We listened to your broadcasts. We intercepted your communications. We learned everything about you, while you learned nothing about us. We saw how you treated species that couldn't defend themselves. We saw the conquered worlds, the enslaved populations, the destroyed civilizations. Somin continued. So, humanity made a choice. We decided to remain silent until we could speak from a position of strength. Every nation on Earth contributed. We put aside our differences and worked toward one goal, ensuring that when we finally joined the galactic community, it would be as equals, not as victims. You deceived us, Veltorix said. His voice was hard. You hid your true capabilities. You let us believe you were weak. We protected ourselves, Somin shot back. Would you have done differently? If you were a species surrounded by empires that conquered primitive worlds, would you announce your presence before you were ready? Or would you prepare, learn, and build strength in secret? Silence filled the chamber. It was an uncomfortable silence, because they all knew the answer. They would have done exactly what humanity did. A delegate from a small species called the Korathi stood up. The Korathi had been conquered by the Vexari 200 years ago. They served as laborers and servants throughout the Vexari Empire. The delegate's voice was quiet, almost afraid. Ambassador Somin, if I may ask a question. Somin nodded. Please. You have these powerful ships. You have weapons that can defeat the Vexari. What do you plan to do with this power? Will you conquer others as the Vexari have done? Will you build your own empire? It was the question everyone wanted answered. Somin could feel the tension in the room. This moment would define how the galaxy saw humanity for generations to come. No. Somin said simply. We will not conquer. We will not enslave. We will not build an empire. Earth's dreadnoughts were built for one purpose: to ensure our freedom, and now that we have that freedom, we extend an offer to any species that wants it. We will help you defend yourselves. We will share our technology with those who seek independence, not domination. We will stand against any empire that tries to destroy or enslave weaker species. Impossible, a Vexari delegate shouted. No species gives away power freely. You humans are lying. You're trying to make us weak so you can conquer us later. Taehyun smiled. It was not a friendly smile. You would think that, wouldn't you? Because that's how the Vexari operate. You can't imagine a species that doesn't want to dominate others. But that's the difference between humanity and empires like yours. We remember what it felt like to be vulnerable. We remember the fear of being conquered. And we refuse to become the thing we feared. Veltorix raised one of his many limbs, calling for silence. These are bold words, Ambassador Somin. But words are easy. How do we know you mean what you say? Somin had been waiting for this question. She nodded to Taehyun, who activated another hologram. This one showed technical specifications, ship designs, weapon systems. It was everything the Korathi would need to build their own defense fleet. This is the design for a frigate, Somin explained. It's not as powerful as our dreadnoughts, but it's more than enough to stand against Vexari cruisers. We're offering this design to the Korathi people, along with the technical support to build them. Within 2 years, the Korathi can have their own fleet. They can defend their worlds. They can be free. The Korathi delegate stared at the hologram with wide eyes. His hands shook. He looked like he might cry. Why? He whispered. Why would you help us? Because you deserve freedom, Somin said. Because every species deserves the right to determine their own future. And because if we only use our power to protect ourselves, then we're no better than the empires we despise. The chamber erupted. Some delegates cheered. Others shouted in anger. The Vexari delegation stormed out. But Somin stood calmly in the center of it all, watching as the galaxy began to change. That evening, back in their quarters, Taehyun poured 2 glasses of water from Earth. It was a luxury in space, drinking water from their home planet. But tonight felt like a moment worth celebrating. "Do you think they believed us?" he asked. Salmon took a sip and looked out the window at the stars. "Some did. Some didn't. But it doesn't matter. In 6 months, the Korathi will have their first frigate. In a year, they'll have 10. And when other subjugated species see the Korathi standing free, they'll want the same thing. Actions will prove our words true." Quote, "The Vexari won't allow it. They'll send another fleet." "I know," Salmon said quietly. "And when they do, they'll learn the same lesson again. Earth doesn't make empty threats. And we don't abandon our allies." Far above the Council Station, hidden in the darkness of space, 3 human dreadnoughts maintained a silent watch. Captain Donghyun commanded one of them. His orders were simple. Protect the ambassadors, observe the Council's reaction, and prepare for the inevitable Vexari response. "Sir," his communications officer said, "we're receiving encrypted transmissions from 17 different species. They're all asking the same thing." "Let me guess," Donghyun said with a slight smile. "They want to know if our offer is real." "Yes, sir." Donghyun looked at the planet-sized station below, where Salmon was changing the course of galactic history with nothing but words and the truth. "Tell them yes," he said. "The offer is real. Earth stands ready to help any species that seeks freedom." The galaxy was waking up to a new reality, and humanity was ready to lead them into it. 3 months had passed since Salmon stood before the Galactic Council. 3 months since humanity offered to share its technology with oppressed species. 3 months since the galaxy learned that Earth was not the primitive world they thought it was. Those 3 months had been busy. Captain Junho stood in the training facility on Europa, one of Jupiter's moons. The facility was built under kilometers of ice, hidden from sensors and prying eyes. Around him, 30 Korathi pilots sat in simulation pods, learning to fly human-designed fighters. The Korathi were small beings, barely a meter tall, with 4 arms and large eyes adapted for low light. The Vexari had used them as miners and maintenance workers. They called the Korathi weak and cowardly. Junho saw something different. He saw survivors. He saw a species that had endured 2 centuries of slavery and hadn't given up hope. He saw students who learned faster than anyone expected. "Attention!" Junho called out. The Korathi pilots immediately stopped what they were doing and looked at him. "Today we're running Combat Scenario 17. This is the hardest one yet. You'll be outnumbered 3-1 against Vexari interceptors. Your objective is to protect a cargo ship long enough for it to escape." One of the Korathi pilots raised a hand. Her name was difficult for humans to pronounce, so she went by the nickname Swift. "Captain Junho, in our previous training, you told us not to fight like humans. What did you mean?" Junho smiled. It was a question he had been waiting for. He walked to the center of the room, where a holographic display showed various ship types. "Humans are aggressive fighters," he explained. "We charge forward. We take risks. It works for us because we're willing to accept casualties to achieve our goals. But the Korathi are different. For 200 years, you've survived by being careful, by being smart, by knowing when to hide and when to run. The Vexari think these are weaknesses. They're wrong." He activated the display, showing a battle simulation. In this scenario, a human pilot would attack the enemy interceptors directly. They would try to destroy them in combat. But I don't want you to do that. I want you to think like Korathi. How would you protect the cargo ship without directly engaging the enemy? Swift studied the scenario for a moment. Then, her large eyes brightened with understanding. "We wouldn't fight them at all. We would lead them away, make them chase us into an asteroid field or near a gas giant where their sensors don't work well. We would use the environment as our weapon." "Exactly," Junho said. "You don't need to be the strongest fighters in the galaxy. You need to be the smartest. Use your natural instincts. Use what you're good at, and use human technology to make those strengths even better." The Korathi pilots looked at each other. Something changed in their expressions. For the first time, they looked confident. While Junho trained the Korathi, other human instructors worked with different species across the solar system. On Mars, a group of stealthy engineers learned to maintain and repair human ship systems. In the asteroid belt, Morthene soldiers practiced infantry tactics. On Earth's moon, representatives from 12 different species attended classes on military strategy, ship design, and weapons technology. It was an unprecedented effort. Every instructor had volunteered. Every human ship in the outer system had been converted to training facilities. Earth's government had devoted enormous resources to this program, but it was necessary. Because everyone knew what was coming. The Vexari Empire would not forgive the humiliation Earth had caused them. They would not accept the loss of their conquered species. They were preparing for war. Admiral Hyunwoo received the intelligence reports in his office on the moon. He was the commander of all Earth's military forces, a position he had held for 15 years. He was 52 years old, and his hair was starting to turn gray. The weight of protecting humanity and its new allies rested on his shoulders. 300 ships, he said, reading the report. They're assembling 300 warships. The largest fleet the Vexari have ever created. Across from him sat Nari, Earth's Minister of Interstellar Affairs. She was responsible for coordinating the coalition of species that had formed around Earth. It was a difficult job. Every species had different needs, different cultures, different ways of thinking, but somehow, she made it work. Can we defeat them? Nari asked. She wasn't a military person, but she needed to understand the situation. Hyunwoo considered the question carefully. Our dreadnoughts are superior to anything the Vexari have. Ship for ship. We're better. But they'll have numbers on their side, and they'll be desperate. Desperate enemies are dangerous. What do we need? Allies, Hyunwoo said simply. We need the species we've been training to be ready. We need them to fight alongside us. Not because we order them to, but because they choose to. Because they believe in what we're building. Nari nodded. She stood and walked to the window. Outside, Earth hung in the sky, beautiful and blue. I'll make sure they're ready. You focus on winning the battle. I'll focus on winning their hearts. 4. The call went out to every species Earth had trained. To the Korathi pilots, who had learned to turn their caution into strategy. To the stealthy engineers, who could repair a damaged ship in half the time it took before. To the Morthene soldiers who combined their natural strength with human tactics. To 17 different species across 20 systems. The message was simple. The Vexari are coming. Will you stand with Earth? The responses came quickly. Every species said yes. They would fight. They would stand together. Because Earth had given them something they hadn't had in centuries. Hope. Commander Yuna coordinated the coalition forces from her position on the command station orbiting Earth. She had been promoted after the first battle with the Vexari. Now she commanded not just human ships, but vessels from dozens of species. It was a logistical nightmare. Every species used different communication protocols. Every ship had different capabilities. Every captain had different levels of experience. But Yuna was good at her job. She created battle groups that combined human strength with alien advantages. She paired Korathi scouts with human destroyers. She put stealthy support ships alongside Morthene assault craft. She built a fleet that was greater than the sum of its parts. Lieutenant Jisoo worked alongside Yuna, managing the tactical systems that would coordinate the coalition forces. She was young, only 28. But she had designed many of the computer systems that Earth's fleet used. Now she adapted those systems to work with alien technology. It's working, Jisoo reported during one of their planning sessions. The integration protocols are functioning better than expected. All coalition ships can now share targeting data and tactical information in real time. Good, Yuna said. Because we're going to need every advantage we can get. Yuna. Yuna. The news arrived on a quiet Tuesday morning. The Vexari fleet had left their home system. They were heading toward Earth at maximum speed. Estimated arrival: 4 months. The galaxy held its breath. On the council station, Salmon met with representatives from 43 neutral species. These were civilizations that didn't want war, but also didn't want to anger the Vexari. They were the fence-sitters, the ones who would wait to see who won before choosing a side. What happens if the Vexari win? One representative asked. It was a fair question. Salmon didn't hesitate. If the Vexari win, then everything goes back to how it was. Oppression continues. Slavery continues. Conquest continues. But if we win, the galaxy changes forever. No more empires built on suffering. No more species living in fear. A new age begins. That's idealistic, another representative said. Maybe, Salmon admitted. But idealism backed by dreadnoughts is just called policy. And Earth has plenty of both. As the weeks passed, the coalition fleet assembled. 400 ships gathered near Earth's moon. It was the most diverse fleet in galactic history. Ships of every size and shape, built by dozens of different species, all united under one purpose. Captain Dongyun walked through the docking bay, where coalition crews mingled with human personnel. He saw a Korathi pilot sharing a meal with a human engineer. He saw a Morthine soldier teaching hand-to-hand combat techniques to a group of interested humans. He saw a Selthi mechanic working alongside a human technician to repair a damaged fighter. This was what they were fighting for. Not just freedom, but the possibility of something better. A galaxy where different species could work together instead of conquering each other. His communications device buzzed. It was a message from Admiral Hyunwoo. All captains report to command briefing in 1 hour. The Vexari fleet has entered our detection range. The battle will begin in 72 hours. Donghyun looked around the docking bay one more time. At all these different beings, working together, laughing together, preparing to fight together, he felt a surge of pride, not just in humanity, but in all of them. They had 3 days to prepare. 3 days, until the largest battle in galactic history. 3 days, until they proved that freedom was worth fighting for. Far away, in the cold darkness between stars, the Vexari fleet advanced. 300 warships, carrying weapons designed to destroy planets. Their emperor had given them simple orders. Make an example of Earth. Show the galaxy what happens to species that defy the Vexari Empire. But the Vexari didn't know what was waiting for them. They didn't know about the coalition that had formed. They didn't know about the training, the preparation, the unity that Earth had built. They thought they were going to fight a single species. They were about to learn that they were wrong. Again, the command center was silent, except for the soft hum of computers. Admiral Hyunwoo stood at the center, surrounded by holographic displays showing the approaching Vexari fleet. Around him, captains from 24 species waited for orders. This was the moment everything had been building toward. The Vexari fleet will arrive in 63 hours, Hyunwoo said. His voice was calm, steady. They have 300 warships. We have 412 vessels in our coalition fleet. The numbers favor us, but don't be fooled. The Vexari have been fighting wars for centuries. They're experienced, disciplined, and they're coming here to make a statement. He gestured to the tactical display. It showed the solar system with colored markers representing different fleet positions. They'll expect us to defend Earth directly. They'll expect us to cluster our ships near the planet and wait for them to attack. We're not going to do that. Captain Minho leaned forward. He had been studying Vexari tactics for months. We're going to use their arrogance against them, Hyunwoo explained. The Vexari think they're superior. They think we're lucky amateurs who won one battle. So we're going to let them believe that. We're going to make mistakes. We're going to look disorganized. And when they commit to their attack, thinking they have us beaten, we spring the trap. Commander Yuna brought up a new display. It showed fleet positions that looked scattered and poorly coordinated. This is how we'll be positioned when the Vexari arrive. To them, it will look like we panicked, like we tried to assemble a fleet but couldn't organize it properly. But in reality, Jisoo continued, every ship will be exactly where it needs to be. The apparent chaos is carefully planned. When Admiral Hyunwoo gives the signal, we'll reform into attack formations faster than the Vexari can react. A Korathi captain raised one of his 4 hands. What about our pilots? We're not experienced in large-scale combat. Junho stood up. He had been working with the Korathi for months and knew their capabilities. You won't be fighting the main battle. Your role is hit and run attacks, fast strikes on enemy supply ships and damaged vessels. You won't face their main fleet head-on. You'll do what you do best. Survive and succeed through intelligence, not brute force. Thanks for watching. The Korathi captain looked relieved. Around the room, other coalition captains nodded. Each species had been given roles that played to their strengths. The Morthene, strong and tough, would handle boarding actions. The Selthi, with their advanced sensors, would coordinate intelligence gathering. The humans would lead the direct assault with their dreadnoughts. One more thing, Hyunwoo said. The Vexari have a planet cracker weapon on their flagship. It's designed to destroy worlds. If they can't conquer Earth, they'll try to destroy it out of spite. We cannot let that weapon reach firing range. That flagship is priority target number 1. The meeting continued for 3 more hours. Every detail was discussed, every contingency planned for. When it finally ended, the captains returned to their ships to brief their crews. The entire fleet began final preparations. On the human dreadnought Defiant, Minho walked through the corridors greeting his crew. They were tense but ready. They had trained for this. They were prepared. Captain, his weapons officer called out. All systems are at full capacity. Railguns charged, missile pods loaded, energy weapons ready. Good, Minho replied. Now get some rest. All of you. In 60 hours, we're going to be fighting for days straight. Sleep while you can. Across the fleet, similar scenes played out. Captains checked their ships. Engineers ran final diagnostics. Soldiers prepared their weapons. And in the quiet moments between preparations, people thought about what they were fighting for. On a Korathi frigate, Swift sat with her fellow pilots. They were nervous. They had trained hard, but training was different from real combat. Do you think we'll survive? One of them asked. Swift thought about Captain Junho and his lessons. About fighting smart instead of fighting hard. About using their natural advantages. Yes, she said. We're going to survive, and we're going to show the Vexari that they were wrong about us. We're not weak. We're not cowards. We're Korathi. And we're free. The hours counted down. 60 hours became 40. 40 became 20. The Vexari fleet crossed into the outer solar system, their massive ships moving in perfect formation. They were confident. They were powerful. They were about to make the same mistake they made before, underestimating their enemy. On the Vexari flagship, their new commander studied the tactical display. His name was Korth, and he had been chosen personally by the Vexari Emperor to avenge their previous defeat. Korth was a veteran of 70 campaigns. He had destroyed 12 civilizations and conquered 20 more. He did not believe in mercy. What do our sensors show? Korth demanded. His tactical officer studied the readings. The human fleet is scattered throughout the inner system. They appear disorganized. Multiple species, poor coordination. It looks like they assembled their fleet in panic. Korth smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. Amateurs. They think numbers alone will save them. They don't understand warfare. Proceed with the attack plan. We'll destroy them ship by ship. What Korth didn't know was that every sensor reading his ship received had been carefully crafted by Jisoo and her team. The Coalition fleet was feeding the Vexari false information, making them see what they expected to see instead of the truth. The Vexari fleet entered the asteroid belt. This was a dangerous area for large ships. Thousands of rocks, some as large as mountains, floated in unpredictable patterns. Korth ordered his fleet to slow down and proceed carefully. That's when the first attack came. Korathi fighters appeared from behind asteroids, their small size allowing them to hide in places the Vexari couldn't scan. They launched missiles at the rear ships of the Vexari formation, targeting engines and sensor arrays. The missiles weren't powerful enough to destroy the big Vexari warships, but they didn't need to be. They just needed to cause confusion. "We're under attack," the Vexari tactical officer shouted. "From where?" Korth demanded. "Everywhere and nowhere. They're using the asteroids as cover. We can't get a clear shot." Korth growled in frustration. "Send fighters to clear them out." But when the Vexari fighters launched, they found themselves at a disadvantage. The Korathi pilots knew how to fly in asteroid fields. They had grown up in cramped mining tunnels, flying through tight spaces. The asteroids weren't obstacles to them. They were advantages. Swift led her squadron through a gap between two large asteroids, 3 Vexari fighters in pursuit. She waited until the last moment, then pulled a sharp turn that her training had prepared her for. Her ship barely squeezed through a narrow opening. The Vexari fighters, larger and less maneuverable, couldn't follow. 2 of them slammed into the asteroids. The third pulled up just in time, but Swift's wingmate was waiting with missiles. All across the asteroid belt, similar scenes played out. The Korathi weren't trying to destroy the Vexari fleet. They were harassing it, slowing it down, making the enemy angry and frustrated, just like Junho had taught them. By the time the Vexari fleet cleared the asteroid belt, they had lost 12 fighters and 3 ships had sustained minor damage. More importantly, they were angry. Korth wanted revenge for this embarrassment. "All ships, maximum speed," he ordered. "We're going straight for Earth. No more delays. We'll crush their main fleet and destroy their planet." The Vexari fleet accelerated toward Earth's moon, where the bulk of the coalition forces appeared to be waiting. Korth studied his tactical display and smiled. The enemy ships were still scattered, still disorganized. He would smash through them like a hammer through glass. "All weapons, prepare to fire. Target the largest human ships first. Show them that their dreadnoughts mean nothing against Vexari might." The 2 fleets closed to combat range. The Vexari opened fire first, hundreds of plasma bolts and missiles streaking toward the coalition forces. It looked like the battle would be over quickly. Then Yuna gave the signal. In perfect synchronization, the coalition fleet reformed. Ships that had appeared scattered suddenly moved into precise attack formations. The disorganization vanished, replaced by military precision that would have impressed the greatest tacticians in history. Human dreadnoughts moved to the front, their shields absorbing the Vexari attack. Coalition ships filled supporting roles, exactly where they needed to be. On the Vexari flagship, Korth stared at his tactical display in shock. That's impossible. They couldn't coordinate that many different species so perfectly. His tactical officer's voice shook. "Sir, their battle network is far more advanced than our intelligence suggested. Every ship in their fleet is sharing information instantly. They're fighting as one. Then we'll break them," Korth snarled. "All ships, concentrate fire on their command vessel." But Hyunwoo had anticipated this. The Defiant, the human flagship, wasn't where the Vexari sensors said it was. That was a decoy ship, well-armored, but expendable. The real command center was hidden among the fleet, impossible to identify. "All ships," Hyunwoo's voice came through every coalition vessel. "Execute attack plan Delta. Show them what we've built together." The coalition fleet struck back. Human railguns fired their devastating projectiles. Stealthy ships used their advanced sensors to identify weak points in Vexari shields. Morthine boarding craft launched toward disabled enemy vessels. And everywhere, Korathi fighters darted in and out, striking at opportunities and vanishing before retaliation could come. The battle that Korth thought would be easy turned into a nightmare. His 300-ship fleet was being torn apart by an enemy that fought with unity, intelligence, and technology he couldn't match. In the command center, Hyunwoo watched the battle unfold. Everything was going according to plan, but he knew the hardest part was still coming. Somewhere in that fleet was the Vexari flagship with its planet cracker weapon. And that weapon could not be allowed to fire. The battle had been raging for 6 hours. Space around Earth was filled with debris, damaged ships, and the bright flashes of weapons fire. The Vexari fleet was suffering heavy losses, but they kept fighting. Korth refused to retreat. His emperor had given him orders: destroy Earth or die trying. On the bridge of the Defiant, Admiral Hyunwoo studied the tactical display. The coalition was winning, but the cost was high. 37 ships had been destroyed. Hundreds of crew members from dozens of species were dead. And the Vexari flagship, the massive vessel carrying the planet cracker weapon, was still active and dangerous. Where is that flagship? Hyunwoo demanded. Jisoo worked frantically at her console. The Vexari had learned their lesson about electronic warfare. Their flagship was using every trick to hide its location among the fleet. I'm trying to isolate its signature, but they're masking it well. Commander Yuna stood beside Hyunwoo, her face tense. Sir, if we don't find it soon, they might get desperate enough to use the planet cracker. They must know they're losing. Hyunwoo nodded. That was exactly what he was afraid of. A desperate enemy was unpredictable, and Korth had shown no mercy in his previous campaigns. He would absolutely destroy Earth rather than accept defeat. Suddenly, the Vexari fleet's formation changed. Ships that had been fighting defensively began pulling back, creating a corridor through their own fleet. At the end of that corridor, the flagship appeared, its massive bulk pushing through toward Earth. There, Jisoo called out. The flagship is making a run for Earth. They're charging the planet cracker weapon. Hyunwoo felt ice in his stomach. The weapon needed 4 minutes to fully charge. Once it fired, nothing could stop it. Earth would be destroyed. All dreadnoughts, intercept course, he ordered. Maximum speed. We have to stop that ship, but the Vexari had planned this well. Their remaining ships formed a defensive wall between the flagship and the human dreadnoughts. It would take precious time to break through. Time they didn't have. On the dreadnought Indomitable, positioned near Earth's moon, Lieutenant Jiho saw what was happening. He ran calculations quickly. His ship was the closest to the flagship's projected path. He could intercept it. But there was no time to coordinate with the fleet. No time to wait for orders. Helm, set a ramming course for the Vexari flagship, Jiho ordered. His helm officer turned to stare at him. Sir, that's a suicide run. I know, Jiho said calmly. He opened a channel to his crew. All hands. This is the captain. The Vexari flagship is attempting to destroy Earth. We're the only ship in position to stop it. I'm ordering all non-essential personnel to the escape pods. Launch, immediately. Those who stay, I need you at your stations for the next 3 minutes. Captain Donghyun's voice came through on the command channel. Jiho, wait. We can get reinforcements to you. No time, sir, Jiho replied. He watched his screens show the escape pods launching from his ship. Most of his crew were getting to safety, but some stayed. His weapons officer stayed. Quote, his helm officer stayed. 43 crew members chose to remain at their posts. This is what we built these ships for. Not to conquer, not to dominate, to protect. He switched to fleet-wide communications. All vessels, this is Indomitable. We have the flagship. Make sure no other ship gets through. Make sure what we're doing matters. Donghyun understood. So did every other captain in the fleet. The coalition ships fighting around the area redoubled their efforts, creating an impenetrable wall that no other Vexari ship could cross. Jiho's sacrifice would not be wasted. On the Vexari flagship, Korth watched the human ship approach with confusion. One dreadnought against his flagship? Was the human captain insane? Weapons, destroy that ship, he ordered. But the Indomitable shields were at maximum power. Every bit of energy the ship had was diverted to the forward shields. Vexari weapons fire splashed against them, weakening them, but not breaking them. Jiho's ship continued its approach. "Sir, they're on a collision course," the Vexari tactical officer reported, his voice rising in panic. "Evasive maneuvers," Korth shouted. Too late. The Indomitable slammed into the Vexari flagship at full speed. The impact was visible from Earth's surface, a bright flash in the sky that lasted for several seconds. Both ships were destroyed instantly. The Planet Cracker weapon, not fully charged but damaged beyond repair, detonated. The explosion consumed both vessels and sent debris in all directions. On the Defiant, Hyunwoo closed his eyes briefly. 43 crew members had just given their lives to save billions. He would remember every one of their names. But right now, he had a battle to win. "All ships, the flagship is destroyed," he announced. "The Vexari have no command ship, no superweapon, and no reason to keep fighting. Press the advantage." The coalition fleet surged forward. The Vexari ships, already demoralized by their losses, broke formation. Some tried to retreat, others fought on, out of desperation or loyalty. But the outcome was no longer in doubt. Within 2 more hours, the battle was over. 137 Vexari ships had been destroyed. The remaining vessels surrendered. Korth was dead, killed when his flagship was destroyed. The mighty Vexari Empire's invasion fleet had been completely defeated. Hyunwoo stood on the bridge of the Defiant and felt exhaustion wash over him. They had won. Earth was safe. But the cost had been terrible. 91 coalition ships destroyed. Over 12,000 dead from 24 different species. "Sir," Yuna said quietly, "the Vexari survivors are asking for terms of surrender. Take them prisoner," Hyunwoo ordered. "Treat them according to the rules we've established. No revenge. No cruelty. We're better than that." Around Earth, the coalition fleet regrouped. Medical ships moved among the damaged vessels, providing aid. Recovery teams searched for survivors in the debris. And on every ship, crews mourned their dead while celebrating their survival. On a Korathi frigate, Swift and her squadron returned to their hangar. They had lost 3 pilots, but they had performed beyond anyone's expectations. As she climbed out of her fighter, her crew chief, an elderly Korathi who had been enslaved for 80 years, approached her with tears in his eyes. "We're free," he whispered. "After 200 years, we're finally free." Swift hugged him. Around the hangar, other Korathi were celebrating, crying, laughing. They had proven to themselves and the galaxy that they were not weak. They were not cowards. They were warriors who fought for their freedom. 6 months after the battle, the Galactic Council met again. The chamber looked different now. 12 new species had seats, former subjects of the Vexari Empire, who were now independent. The Vexari Empire itself had collapsed into civil war, with different factions fighting for control. Ambassador Saman stood before the council with Taehyun beside her, but she wasn't alone. Representatives from 60 species stood with her, all members of the Coalition of Free Worlds. "Today marks a new era," Saman declared. "For too long, the galaxy has been ruled by force. The strong conquered the weak. Empires rose and fell, but the cycle of violence continued. Today, we offer a different path." Taehyun activated a holographic display showing a document. "This is the Treaty of Soul. It establishes basic rights for all species. The right to self-determination, the right to defend themselves, the right to exist without fear of conquest or enslavement. And most importantly, it establishes enforcement mechanisms. Any empire that violates these rights will face the full might of the coalition. Council Prime Veltorix studied the document carefully. You're proposing to make the coalition a military force that can intervene in other systems. That's unprecedented. So was a species building dreadnoughts in secret, Nari said. She had joined the delegation, her work coordinating the coalition species, proving invaluable. So was 60 different species fighting together as one. We live in unprecedented times. We need unprecedented solutions. What about sovereignty? Another delegate asked. What stops the coalition from becoming just another empire? Checks and balances, Salman replied. No single species controls the coalition. Decisions require consensus from member species. And most importantly, the coalition's mandate is purely defensive. We don't conquer. We don't occupy. We protect, and then we leave. The debate went on for hours. But eventually, the treaty passed. Not unanimously, but by a large enough majority to matter. The coalition of free worlds was now officially recognized by the Galactic Council. That evening, on Earth's moon, a memorial was dedicated. It stood on the surface, visible to anyone who visited. 417 names were carved into stone brought from Earth itself. Jiho's name was at the top, followed by the 42 crew members who stayed with him and the 373 other coalition personnel who died in the battle. Captain Junho stood before the memorial with a group of Karathi officers. They were the first graduating class of the Joint Human-Alien Naval Academy. In a month, they would command their own ships, protecting Karathi worlds, and helping other species achieve freedom. They broke the silence, one of the Karathi officers said, looking at the names. Now we maintain it. No, Junho said gently. Now we make sure the silence never returns. That every species, no matter how small or weak others think they are, has a voice. That's what they died for. Far above the moon, new ships were under construction. Not just human ships, but coalition vessels incorporating technology and ideas from dozens of species. These ships would patrol the galaxy, ready to respond whenever freedom was threatened. The age of conquest was not over. There would always be empires that sought power through force. But now, there was a counterbalance. There were species willing to stand together, to fight for each other, to prove that unity was stronger than tyranny. Admiral Hyunwoo stood in his office, looking at Earth through the window. He was tired. The past months had aged him. But he felt satisfaction, too. They had done something important. They had changed the galaxy. His communicator buzzed. It was a message from a distant system, one of the newest members of the coalition. They were reporting increased military activity from a neighboring empire. They were asking for help. Hyunwoo smiled. This was the new reality. Earth was no longer a hidden world, silent and isolated. They were part of the galaxy now. And with that came responsibilities. Prepare my ship, he said to his assistant. We have work to do. The galaxy had thought Earth was defenseless. They had been wrong. The dreadnoughts had broken the silence with thunder and fire, and that sound still echoed across the stars, a reminder to anyone who would threaten the innocent. Humanity and its allies were here to stay, and they would never be silent again.